Oh, hello, friends. David Vos here. Oh boy, it's a beautiful day, especially here at this little falls near where I live. I like watching water. I hope you're all having a great day. I'm having a good day. Just sitting here looking at these waterfalls here. I feel really good when I see water. I always like being next to a creek or a river or a pond. That's why I love my pond on my property. I was so happy that I had this pond, and I'm making it bigger. With a shovel. I don't have a cat. I don't have, well, I got some beavers, and they were helping me. But they're a little slow, so I'm trying to help them out. The other day, I went over there and got a shovel and started. There was a part of my pond that had been, I don't know who did it. Somebody made a breach in it, and it got smaller than it used to be. It was a big pond. So I was going to try and fix it, and I did fix it, but got a little ways to go. But after I fixed it, I noticed I came out the next day and it was bigger. The water had risen. I was like, wait, how could that happen? I already had it all the way to the top. I went over there and looked, and it looked like the beavers decided, whoa, boy, I guess we're getting some help, and we better jump in here and get this working. So they've been going to work on my pond as well, and together we're gonna. I didn't know how they'd take it if I was gonna help them. I thought maybe they'd leave or something, but they just want a place to live, so I suppose they don't mind me helping them. But, as much as I like water, I think waterfalls, the sound of the water running over the falls, and I like the way that the water, I don't know what this is, guys, but when you notice how the water or the rocks look so neat because they look chiseled and big slabs, and obviously somebody's put these rocks around the edge. I don't know if the flat rocks that the water is going over is actually man-made. It probably is, but there are a lot of rocks that are flat around here just by nature. I'm sure those rocks are really naturally flat, and somebody might have helped them put them in place a little bit, but I doubt it because there's a natural flat area where the rocks are under the ground, and the water just sort of washes it away until it gets down to the bare rock. But I see that, excuse me, everywhere. But there's something about looking at the rocks, the big, I guess your mind conceives of how heavy they are and how amazing it is to have these big old rocks where maybe you feel thoughts of huge, sort of a fear-inspiring look to them. They're clean. It's a place to walk, a place to stand. Everybody needs water. Maybe that's an integral need that we have. The Bible talks about the water of life. I guess it makes you feel peaceful. Sort of a serenity. You feel grounded. The rocks are kind of like grounded. And the water is kind of like the flow, maybe energy. Even the sound kind of feels like rushing energy. Maybe that's why we feel good when we're sitting next to a falls. And the bigger the falls, the more noise and the more power. And that power is almost, I'm speculating, but maybe that's what makes us feel good, because we feel like we're standing next to power, to the strength. They're coming from some source that must be powerful. Down from the mountains, bouncing, bubbling down from the heights, from the mountain of God or something. It just all fits, doesn't it? I think the parables in the Bible, they're not even really parables. It's just language. It's the natural telepathic language. That's what the language of the Bible is telepathic. You can have a telepathic communication with somebody, but the only way you can do it is with thoughts. And then you don't even have to speak the same language. You wouldn't even have to know the person. Higher advanced beings can come to you and speak to you. Now, how do they speak to you if you guys don't know? You've never seen each other, maybe. Who knows? Maybe you do know these people in your past life or something. But more than likely, these are very advanced beings from another plane or another dimension or whatever that people talk about or we imagine. Angels, the Bible talks about. But we can communicate with them. Now, how is that? Do you think they speak English up there? Well, what about people in Germany and Spain and stuff, and China? Well, they can't communicate with angels and we can because we're English? No. So they communicate with us through telepathic thought, which is thought forms. And it's a universal language, isn't it? Because everybody knows the concept of strength and power and love and peace and whatever other beauty. Flowers are beautiful in every language. Rocks are strength and foundational for every language, for every person, for every being in the universe. I think it's a universal language, which means you could speculate and extrapolate from that all the places in the universe recognize the earth. They recognize rocks, trees, flowers. This is something that must exist on every planet, every dimension. But when you get down to the core of communication, when you strip away all of the unnecessary things, like, in a paradisical world, there's no money. So that would be an extraneous part of the thing. You wouldn't be able to communicate by picturing in your mind a dollar bill, because that probably doesn't exist. A dollar bill wouldn't exist in China because they have, I don't know what Chinese use. In Mexico, it's a peso, or Europe, it's a euro or something. So they wouldn't understand. They might see a dollar and it might look like a euro because we have things similar here. But if you were talking to somebody on another planet, they may not have dollar bills. They may not even have a monetary system. So that wouldn't be part of your integral part of your innermost being. So when you have dreams that are real simple, right back to nature, I think you're getting back to a real amazing foundational telepathic language. Sometimes we wake up having these dreams. We know that they're trying to speak to us. But I think that the ancient Bible and all the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita and all of the scriptures, ancient hieroglyphs originally were pictures. The petroglyphs in New Mexico, they're pictures. And they represent astrological pictures and signs. But it's a universal language. So if you could communicate with pictures, everybody would communicate and understand one another. So that's how I believe the divine being communicates with us. That's why they write in parables. Shiva and Brahma and all this stuff, that was parables too. Just like our book. We talked about some of the parables yesterday. Light, according to our New Testament, is God. God is light. So the highest, and think about it, the sun is in the sky. It's the highest thing, beyond the sky even. You see it peering through the clouds. And it's bright. And it seems to give life to everything. It's a universal language. So I feel, I'm the kind of person that I love the water. And I love the rocks. I love flowers very much. But I really like a climate that's warm. Now, I'm getting used to this climate here where it's wet and a lot of growth and green and water. But I've always felt real comfortable in a desert climate. I think I'm a sun person. I'm a light person. I like A Leo is a sun person, you know, and I'm a Leo. My mother used to say she was an earth person. She always said that. She loved digging in the earth, she said. And so, I remember she used to, they lived back in the woods up in Idaho for many years. Many years. And I was a young man. We'd have to walk in sometimes. They lived way back in the woods. And we'd walk down, park out on the road, and you'd walk down through the trail to get to Mom's house, and you'd get near the cabin, and there invariably would be my mother. Especially if it was a beautiful day with sunshine. She'd be out with her. She would have a big hat so that the sun wouldn't burn her face or something. She would always have a sun hat on, and she'd be out in the grass just digging and planting flowers, and she'd have flowers all over the place. She loved flowers. But she said she liked to dig in the dirt, and it made her feel happy. Just being there in the dirt. Many people love gardening. So these are universal things that we love. The sunlight, the flowers, the gardening, the rocks. I think that's why people don't realize it, but they really need to get a home where they can have some contact with the earth and with the rocks and make their own garden and accomplish that. I mean, riding bareback or you know, hunting, or you know, out just on a river, on a rock, fishing. You know, it just makes you grounded, and you feel so good, and I think in a sense you're communicating with Mother Earth. So I think the original language is a pictographic language, and we don't, you know, higher, more advanced beings, they don't even probably have to talk with their mouth or write things down. They probably just talk communication telepathically. I know that it's something that they use to talk with me, and so I know that they do that, and I think this is the reason, because I think everything, no matter what planet you go to or where you would go in the universe, I think it's all based on universal law. And just like Einstein, or excuse me, Newton, who had these certain Newtonian laws of physics that he's sort of outlined. He came up with a bunch of these laws that are just universal, and they exist by virtue of themselves. They're the foundation. These laws are the foundation of all creation. Everything in something that's moving in a certain direction by a certain speed, certain velocity, will go in the same direction forever and ever and ever until acted upon by another force. So the concept of opposites. As long as you have a left, you have to have a right. And so because of that, the universe has to obey this law that left is not right. If I'm standing here, then I'm not over there. These kinds of things. You can't be in two places at one time. That's a law. And these laws seem to create, wherever they are in the universe, the exact same universe. Fluids flow down from the heights, from the top to the bottom. It's always from the top to the bottom, things flow. Always. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't have a world somewhere where everything's flowing from the bottom to the top. You know. And you wouldn't have a world somewhere where inside the earth was air, and somehow in the sky it was all solid rock. I mean, because how would you have a universe somewhere in the universe? It would be a place where it was inside out. Then I suppose if you had a place like that, the whole universe would be swallowed up in this black hole. Oh, maybe that is what that is. I don't know. Perhaps there's exceptions to this, and you know, perhaps everything in our visible universe is the way and operates under these laws. And maybe there is completely another universe right next to ours, in a totally separate universe that just inverted. Who knows? Some people have speculated. But that's beyond our purview here. The universe as we see it, with all the galaxies and suns and solar systems in this visible spectrum, I think it all obeys this one set of laws. And therefore, the one language is this language with these pictures. And so I think it doesn't matter if you're an Aztec or a Mayan or a samurai priest in Japan, or a Hopi Indian, or someone from Europe or Spain, or from North America, or wherever you may be, from the southern tip of Africa to Iceland, to the Eskimo. We all are operating under the same laws. We all bleed the same red blood. And we all breathe the same air. We all enjoy peace and happiness and care for our children and love life. And we all really just want the same thing. And I think no matter who you are, if you were sitting here enjoying this waterfall, it would make you feel better. I think a lot of people, they get sick and feel bad. They're under this delusion that this really strange world we live in, this lie, this deception, this government that we live in, what a disaster. They're teaching us such lies, and they're scaring us, telling us that childbirth is some scary thing, right? Oh, push, push, push. Why are you pushing? It comes naturally. You've got to dilate. You got to let it, the doctors want to hurry up because, they got to go home. So let's do a C-section, right? Let's get the push, push. Oh, man, they're scaring the dickens out of women, making them think it's not natural. Somehow you're going to die, and that's not the way that the Native Americans and the natives in all of the different ancient world, they didn't have this trouble. They weren't constantly sick. They knew what herbs to take. They knew Mother Earth. They felt the sweaty, warm back of a horse, and they grabbed its convenient little mane that's right there to hold on to, and that horse would just jump over the rocks and down the trail, and they felt like they were one with this universe. They didn't feel like they were separate. They weren't afraid. They knew who they were. They weren't embarrassed to have a little dirt on their hands. Oh, excuse me while I go freshen up in the I need to go to the lobby and put some powder on my nose. I've got to put a mask on before I see you. I don't want you to really know who I am. I'm really just a clown, isn't it? We're all just running around like clowns, and we've set up a maze for ourselves that we can't even get through. We're living in a fake world. And so we go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you're going to die. Oh, yeah, it's crazy. You got to take this pill, and it's going to probably kill you, but maybe if it doesn't kill you, we can cut your lung out and cure this cancer, but you won't be able to breathe again. It's what, it's just, it makes so much sense, but people are all running around scared out of their mind. If you're sick or you're feeling bad or even just your mood is not right, get back to nature. Let it go. What are you going to get? Are you 30 or 40 years old now? And you're stressed out of your mind? And you think, boy, I just got to keep going. Maybe one day I'll get enough money where I can get the mortgage paid off, and we'll buy a new car, and we'll be able to go on that fancy vacation we've been waiting for. I don't want to get behind. I'll be homeless. You know what? Just let it go. Go be homeless. You'd be happier, right? Go find you a rock to sit on and listen to the water flow. Well, what am I going to eat, Dave? I know you've forgotten. You've forgotten what the food really is. That's probably why we're sick. See the nuts that are in the trees? You see the herbs that are, we wouldn't know, but they've got these amazing things called phytochemicals that you literally have receptors, in your body, that with sunshine, D3 opens up activates your DNA. Well, they go, oh, your DNA is not activated. There's something wrong with you. You've got the gene for cancer. No, you don't. You have the same genes that your grandparents had, and that they're going to be the same genes that your children are going to have. It's nature. It's beautiful. But you didn't go out in the sunshine. Vitamin D3 opens up activates 1,000 genes, and some of those genes aren't activated with you because you haven't been outside. You didn't eat the fish and get the fish oil and the omega-3, which is imperative if you're going to activate with neurotransmitters. You're going to be able to bind with these phytochemicals to give you serotonin and dopamine and happiness. And we don't need to know all of this. We don't need to, what are we, scientists now? No. I'm a dossier. Come on. What you need to be is an herbalist, a naturalist. You need to just relax. Sit on a rock, get your shoes off and dip your feet in the water, touch the ground, ground yourself. Feel the vibration, brother. Get some nourishment. You're eating sterile food, right from the pan right to your mouth. You've sterilized your food. You can't live like that. If you've got some disease that they just know, I got a new one every week, right? Oh, now we got a new one, a mesothelioma. Oh, we got a whole mess of it, right? There's always a new one. They got new names, and it's all a bunch of malarkey. All you need to do is don't trust the doctors. Don't trust them. Boy, run from them. Give it up. Let it go. This world is passing away, and so is its desire. Don't even worry about whether you're going to be homeless. It's so easy to make a little money for a little food if that's what you need, or if whatever. Don't even worry about if you're just, if I just have ragged clothes and I'm running around and then nobody will love me and no, forget that. You don't need friends like that. Right? If all of us would start realizing who we really are, we wouldn't be worried about the mask. We wouldn't be crazy out of our mind. Find a simple life. I know we live in a world where you can't even live if you don't own some land or something. So make it simple. Just work enough to provide simple, basic things. Get yourself some time to dangle your feet in the water and watch the water. And think, meditate upon these symbols that are in the Bible, because that's communication with God. He wrote those symbols. They're the original patterns. Every prophet who ever was a prophet starts off with the with the revelation of paradise. Moses did. He wrote about Genesis chapter 1 and the paradise and the two gods and the ego and the higher nature. Remember, Jacob had 2 wives. Yeah, and he had to go get them from the higher nature, from Laban's house over on the east side of the river in the north. Leah and Rachel. Ra is the son, my friend. Ra'el. And guess whose son Rachel? Guess whose son she gave birth to? There were 12 of these kids, and Leah gave birth to Judah. That was the one who shall have the scepter, the dominion. But Rachel, she gave birth to Joseph, who had the birthright, who would receive the blessings of the dew of heaven. You can't have the blessings of the earth without receiving the dew from heaven. That staff that's in your hand, that lower nature, you can use that nature. That's a good foundation to build your kingdom. But don't let it rule over you. You've got to combine the two. Remember, Jacob was split up at Mahanaim, which is that area where the angels There was a camp of angels, and Jacob had this. He was afraid because Esau, way down there in the bottom, even below the Dead Sea, was coming up, and he was scared. The lower nature is pretty scary, and so he was afraid, and he had to. It shocked him. The whole thing about fear is it separates your psyche from the lower, and the spiritual is sort of set apart and divided. Yahweh did that in the garden. He separated Adam and Eve. He didn't take Eve from Adam's rib, but from his side. They were equal halves, and he separated them. So we're to this day trying to become one again. And so Jacob, he had 2 wives. And there are 2 covenants, The earthly covenant that's going to rule the world, and they're going to be blind, Blindness has happened in part to Israel. Why? Because the scepter shall not depart from Judah until he who comes, who has the legal right. And Joseph shall be the one who will rule over his brethren in a spiritual way, with love. The son of Rachel. So, I think it's really beautiful. Everybody can be proud of who they are, no matter where you are, who you are. I personally can't say, "Oh, I'm so proud. I'm from the motherland." I'm from, my ancestors are from Africa, where the ancient lost city of Kalahari, the ancient lost city. And my roots go back to this amazing thing, and my my genealogy is so great. Well, remember, sorry, the Apostle Paul says, don't worry about all these genealogies and these ancient fables, as though, the fables are just there as a spiritual language to teach you spiritual things. But don't get to thinking that all of these fables are going to be, what's going to save you. Some place on this earth that somehow, if I just can trace my lineage back to this one family, I'm going to be so great. I'm so wonderful. Look at me. That's not what this is about. But sometimes it's nice to know that you're connected, that you're somebody, because you were told all your life you're nobody, right? Oh, you're not of the royal family, you're just a slave. No, we're all royal beings. Even if our time hasn't come, we may be from the tribe of Joseph. He had the coat of many colors. He's a cake not turned. He's white on one side and black on the other. He's burned on one side, but he hasn't been turned yet. And he's mixed himself among the people. And he's all over the north, south, east, and west, even the land of Sinim, which is China. And in every culture and in every language, there are many sheep. The Lord has many sheep which are not of the fold there in Jerusalem. He says, them too I shall gather. And there shall be one flock, and there shall be one shepherd. And we're all important because we're all heirs. But, I've done some research on my name, and I can trace it back to Europe and through my mother and my father. I mean, it's really neat when you can find these kind of connections. But, you don't have to look far. Just look at your actual life, right here, right now. I was born in the mountains above Fresno, California. And I heard about it all my life. I was just learning about this today, actually. A little bit more about it. But, I heard because my brothers are a little older than I am. They're like 9, 10 years older, 11 years older. Some of them. I've got 3 brothers. And they're all between 9 and 10 or 11 years older than me. So, when I was just a little boy, they were out hunting and driving cars and stuff. And so when I was little, when I was born, I only can go by the stories. I remember my brothers telling me, or talking about where we lived when I was born. It was up above Fresno, up above Auberry, which is a place in the mountains. And I remember them saying that we lived in a cabin. Dad was a trapper. And so I don't even know too much about, just from what I've heard. But evidently we lived in this little cabin that was just unfinished or something. It didn't even have the walls completely finished. He was talking about holes in the walls and stuff like that. But I remember them saying something about Shavers Lake. Well, since I was, I was there when I was a baby, but I've never been back to Shavers Lake, so I don't know where it is. I've driven through Fresno as an adult and stuff, and I've driven up a highway. I've been up to Mono Lake, which is up beyond Shavers Lake, which is up in the top of the Sierras, and it's beautiful up there. But we were talking yesterday about the rivers, how every culture has their own river. And I was looking at a map, and I was looking at California. I was looking at the Sacramento River, and I was thinking, oh yeah, that comes down from Shasta, the mountain, and then it comes down through the Sacramento Valley and empties into the San Francisco Bay. And I was thinking, wow. So the Indian called Ishi, who spoke Hebrew, that they found there in 40 or something. The last of the Yahe Indians. He lived up Deer Creek, Mill Creek, which is one of these rivers that feed into the Sacramento. And there was another group of Native Americans that lived up around Mount Shasta. I know that you'll, in some of the New Age writings, they talk a lot about the sacred mountain, Mount Shasta, and there's supposed to be an underground there that goes into the center of the earth, and it's very similar to Argatha or whatever, the North Pole stories and stuff like that. It seems like there's always this great big, every culture has their story. So Mount Shasta is like the Eden of those Indians there in the Native Americans there in California. They're pretty much gone now, completely wiped out. I don't know if there's hardly any left. Supposedly Ishi was the last one. They found him in Butte County, California. But that was their sacred land up in the mountains of Mount Lassen. Mount Lassen was a volcano, and so was Shasta. So how much of that is more or less based on the same traditions that goes all the way back to what we've been talking about with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the story of how they went from Beersheba all the way up to Haran and around in a circle, and they made the circuit, the wheel, and how it represents our existence? Is it really true that there's a mountain of God in the north? Is Mount Zion just a symbol? Or is there any truth to any of these holy places? They were holy to them, and they built their beautiful temples. And perhaps there was a time in the beginning when they were at peace and had this amazing connection with God and with the animals and with themselves. And I believe that. And it was spiritual, whether you were in South Africa or the Yahoo Indians in California. But then I was looking and I was thinking, wait a minute, what about if it empties into the San Francisco Bay, what's the San Joaquin River? I mean, I always knew that there was the Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley, and I just never really kind of traced that San Joaquin River. Well, it turns out that San Joaquin River that also empties into the bay, but comes down from the mountains further south and meets the Sacramento, and they both go into the bay. But the San Joaquin, guess where it comes from? Right up above Fresno. Just a little bit above Shavers Lake. I didn't even know it. But I was born there, basically, at the the mountain of the tallest mountain in the continental United States, Mount Whitney. And there's a little valley in between there, Kings Canyon, and way up above that's Mono Lake or something, and there's something like a Moon Lake, and Shavers Lake is just a few, I don't know, a couple of miles from the very headwaters of the San Joaquin River as it makes its way down into the valley and all the way out to the bay. And I'm sure that there are grand tales and ancient legends about the native peoples that lived in those mountains. And they'd probably go there in the summertime and hunt the stag and the deer, and and have their tales and their connection with the world. And in the winter, get a lot of snow way up there in the mountains, pretty high up there. That mountain's like 14,000 feet. So probably in the winter they would go down in the valley, the fertile valley, and they'd probably go all the way out to the bay. And they probably had a big city there, where our San Francisco is, or you might say San Jose, or whatever it is there on the bay. Just like today, it's the big city, right? Well, that was the metropolis of the Native Americans there on the bay. And their life literally came from the river and the mountain where God dwelt. And he spoke, and it was a volcano, right? Wow, amazing. Oh, it's just a bunch of tradition, Dave. It's a bunch of symbols, and it's just a bunch of myths. Well, if that's what you believe, but it's really something we need to get back to, I feel a connection. The fact that I was allowed or privileged to be born there in this cabin with holes in the walls at the base of the highest mountain in the continental United States, at the headwaters of the San Joaquin. I feel privileged to have experienced that life. But I didn't stay there long. We ended up basically up by Lake Tahoe in a little place called Forest Hill, California. It's interesting because we lived there only about 3 years. We moved around so much as a kid. I mean, I never spent very long anywhere. But about 2 or 3 years we spent up there. And it was only about like a mile from a little... Well, all I know is there was a road. We lived on a road called Yankee Jim. That's all I knew about it as a kid. Well, I learned more about it growing up. Yankee Jim used to be a city back in the days of the gold rush, and it was one of the largest cities in California at the time. I mean, there's just thousands of people there that were digging for gold, and it was way up in the mountains. Well, this was before they had a capital, before there was a California. And so when California was made a state or whatever, and they were voting to see where would be the capital, Sacramento won by 2 votes. And second was Yankee Jim. It was going to be the capital of California. Today there's nothing there. It's high in the mountains above Auburn, California. Above Sacramento, basically, but if you go toward Sacramento, you go north and foothills of Folsom and Auburn and Placerville and Virginia City and so forth. You're going up towards Tahoe. But at the foot in the foothills there's a town called Auburn. We lived there for a while. But up in the mountains, you got to cross the American River. In those days, when I lived there was just a really small, little narrow bridge. I remember sometimes we'd go down there and go swimming in the American River. It's not far from the Feather River and stuff. Or the Deer Creek or Mill Creek, like I was telling you about. All these little rivers and creeks go up to the mountaintops. But you wind around there and you get up to a place called Forest Hill. There's pavement stops after Forest Hill a little ways. And then you can go all the way through to Truckee and to Tahoe on dirt from there. So it's not quite going all the way to Tahoe, but it's up in that general direction. And we lived up in there, and it was just a glorious place to live. So I lived in that whole mountain area growing up quite a bit off and on. We moved around a little bit. Then we ended up going to Idaho, up near the Canadian border. I lived in Wyoming and got to see a lot of beautiful things in the Teton area and up in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho. So I've seen a lot of beautiful mountains and things. I think I was privileged to be able to live in the mountains. When we got to the northern part of Idaho, I was about 13 years old. And we moved into a place called Bonners Ferry, Idaho. It's just a few miles from the Canadian border. And Dad and Mom bought a little piece of property. It was only 5 acres. And it was right below this mountain that looked amazing. It was beautiful. It's called Clifty Mountain. Because it was this big, kind of a glacier mountain. It's not far from Banff and Jasper in Canada if you keep going north along the Kootenay. But it's a magnificently beautiful mountain. And so there's this big cliff, and it's kind of an indention and this point. And this is like a glacier. And then just left of it is a mountain called Katka Face. And it was a sheer cliff, just straight up and down rock. Dad and I my dad would go hunting up in there. Sometimes I'd go with him, but it was hard to keep up with my dad. And one day we was wandering around up there, and it was getting close to dark, and we weren't anywhere near being able to, we had an hour or more to walk our way out. Of course, with my dad, it was like practically sprinting and running. You had to really go fast to keep up with him. So sometimes he would forget that I was younger and I couldn't keep up. But so we were way back in there, and I was probably keeping him back a little bit because I was probably not going as fast as he wanted to. So it started getting late. So he decided to take a shortcut straight down off the cliff. Nobody else in their right mind would ever do that without ropes and, scaffolding or whatever they take, with them, You see these people in these documentaries where they've got a whole caravan of horses and camels and cameras, and they take days to get up the face of a mountain, right? And they've got all this ropes and gear and all this stuff. Man, we're out there with our rifle, and we just start going off down the cliff, just scaling the cliff. Remember, I'm 13 years old, maybe just turning 14, right around 13. So I'm scared out of my mind. But I just did whatever Dad did. I just did whatever he said. He'd say, let's go, I'd say, Dad, he's like, let's go, so all right. So somehow or another, I scaled this cliff, and then we got down off this sheer, straight up and down cliff. And then, I'm not kidding you, this was something like Sylvester Stallone in Cliffhanger. It was just serious business. We should not have been doing it. To this day, I don't know why my dad would have even thought about putting me into that situation. But we made it off the cliff and halfway down the mountain, and then it starts this shale, real steep shale. And if you move a little too much, the shale and the rock would start moving. The whole thing would just come out from under you. And so we walked real slow because we could see it was very unstable. Kind of like an avalanche you see with the snow, but this is with rocks. And because all these rocks are falling off this hanging cliff, and as they would fall, it would make this big base. It was all, just the rocks, the ice, I guess, would get in between the cracks, and in the winter, and they'd pop it. Because ice, somehow when it contracts, when it gets warmer and stuff like that, and it busts the rocks, and it would make these shale and these rocks at the bottom. So we get about halfway down through the shale, and the whole thing starts coming, just moving, like the whole mountain was moving. And both of us, Dad yelled, run! And man, I never ran so fast in my life over these rocks and shale. And man, it was real close that we didn't just get swallowed up in all of the shale and rock in a big avalanche. So at that point, Dad knew we couldn't go that way. He realized we weren't going to make it because it was just too unstable. So he said, well, we're going to have to go back up. Now remember, it's getting close to dark. And coming down this steep, steep cliff was bad enough, but now we got to go up. And man, that was the hardest thing I've ever done, because it was literally straight up and down, and there was nowhere to put your feet anywhere. And I don't know how I made it. I don't know how I made it with no ropes, no help, nothing. At one point, I got my face up against the cliff. I'm wearing tennis shoes, right? I wasn't even prepared for hiking. And I've got one tennis shoe on a little rock that's a ½ inch wide that I can't even, if I move one breath or make one slip or a piece of moss comes out or anything, I'm tumbling thousands of feet down to the bottom. And I'm just shaking because I'm so scared. I can't look down because I start spinning and I'm about to fall off. And I'm crying and I'm saying, Dad, I can't make it. I'm going to fall. And I was scared out of my mind. Just as I thought I was going to fall, I mean, I literally, I was spinning and I couldn't hang on. And my dad took a step toward me. Somehow or another, I don't know what he was hanging on, but he grabbed me by the arm. I said, come on. He didn't even miss a beat. He just grabbed me by the arm and just kind of pulled me over a little bit to where I could get a better footing. And we shimmied our way another several hundred feet up this sheer cliff, made it to the top. But you realize that even though that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, I would never want to have not done that. I mean, yeah, it could have turned out, but now that we know the result and I made it, the memories are priceless. There's so many people that are so caught up into this fake world. They're going to work every day from 9 to 5 or whatever, and they don't ever have any of these experiences. Like Sylvester Stallone in the movie The Cliffhanger, right? They never experienced anything like this. They've never seen an ice cave at 10,000 foot altitude or whatever. They've never been hiking to the top of a mountain, or they've never been horseback riding, or some people have never even, there's some amazing places in the Rocky Mountains up in the sheer. I've been to Glacier National Park, and I've been to all these places like that. There aren't even parks. They're just places where we'd go hunting and hiking, and I used to just go for fun, just to go hike to the top of a mountain. But those experiences will stay with you the rest of your life. The adrenaline, the peace, the experience just makes life worth living. There's nothing like it, friends. You can't really say you're living if you're living inside of a matchbook house, Boise Cascade matchbook house, cookie cutter, I go through some of these, like every city nowadays, in Tulsa or near where I'm at, or Oklahoma City, or Fort Smith, Arkansas, or wherever. And I see every one of these cities, I see these vast tracts of land in the suburbs where they're just building one house after the other. Cookie cutter house. Every house practically looks the same. And you think, well, what, and then some of these houses are like $1 million homes, and there's one, they're gorgeous homes. Several bathrooms and many bedrooms and a pool and a spa and a sauna, and I'm sure they've got everything they can want in there. But they're right in the city, and all around them is more houses. And I wonder, what if you've got money and you want to build a home, why do you build it right in the middle of a city? Well, I guess it's because they got to get to work. They're doctors, lawyers, whatever. They can't be out of town. They don't want to commute, and they don't have time for nature. So they want to pretend they're in nature by building a $1 million home with a fake waterfall, right? Or a place. I know it's relaxing. Sit out on the patio with a latte in the morning, or a glass of, Perrier in the evening, and take a dip in the jacuzzi and stuff like that, and relax from the hard day at work. I know that seems like a good life, But you know what? It isn't. It really isn't. It's meaningless. You didn't build that. You didn't plant those flowers. You got a gardener, right? You didn't even probably even design the house, and you didn't build it with your bare hands. A man's got to go out and build his own home, his own fort, his own. Remember when you were a kid, and several of you were in the neighborhood, and you all get together on every morning. You run out to play, right? Get on your bikes, and best part of it was you and your best friend on your bicycle down a long trail, and it was like an adventure, and you'd finally get to this place back under the trees where nobody could see you, and you could build a fort. And you guys could sit back there and find old cigarette butts and smoke cigarettes and tell jokes, and you were at the top of the world, man. Don't you wish for those days again? Well, as an adult, we never go back to that. We never experience the pretending or the accomplishment of finding your own place and building your own spot and having the adventure. Doing brodies and wheelies. Oh, your mom's like, oh, don't, you'll kill yourself. No, you won't. You're having fun. And even these people that do motocross and skiing and that's all fake too. You pay a lot of money to go and gear up and put these skis on and go down a designated pathway. I mean, I'm not saying it's not fun. It's great. I did all that stuff without the skis, right? Slid down on my head, And there is where the fun is, the experience. That's the experience, is being in the world as it was meant to be. And so we're literally at a point in this world where I believe that there are hundreds and thousands and millions and I guess billions, probably almost nobody is in tune and has any connection with their nature, their true nature, and in contact with who they really are, and it's feeling that peace. Their hormonal, their system is out of balance. They feel like killing somebody. They're bipolar. They're schizophrenic. They're upset. They're unhappy. And you think, well, I just need another beer, or I just need a dip in the sauna and a massage. That's not gonna do it. And I know you think, well, yeah, but I've worked so hard for this PhD, right? I can't just throw it away now. Well, you got so many years in this world to live. If you want to live it, trying to keep up with the Joneses. To be honest with you, I don't think the Joneses has got much, that I would like to try and mimic or anything. You know what I mean? To each his own, but no matter what you do, you're still going to live and experience things in this world, and you're going to die. But when the time comes for you to go and leave this world, let's hope that you can look back with some beautiful memories. And if you've been upset and angry, out of balance, running around screaming, out of your mind, on medications, and stressed out of your mind, and speeding down the road and getting tickets, and going home and spending hours in your bedroom and with a bottle of whiskey, and that's not a life. It's not a life. You don't feel like you've accomplished anything. You can't be good to your neighbor or love people or experience or accomplish anything in that situation. The only way you can ever get to a place where you can really love is when you feel the peace and the love of God, because we love because he first loved us. How does he love us? Well, just look at that waterfall. That's his peace. The river of life. Are you connected? If you're not, you will never feel the love of God, and therefore you will never love or even know what it means to be loved. He stands at the door and he knocks. And all you got to do is open unto him. He will enter. Enter into this temple and go into the most holy and light the candle. And if you've never had the candle lit, somebody was just telling me today, you just wake up, you're born again. Truly born again. And the world becomes HD. And you were living in some crazy cartoon, and now you're in the real world. Everything's HD. The negative, the weight, the anxiety, everything is lifted off of your back, and now you see the world as it is. It's just extreme reality, and every tree and every flower is an amazing adventure. You can't live and not be living. The only way to really live is to actually do it. So, go find you a waterfall and some sunshine, friends, and enjoy yourself and meditate on just meditate on a waterfall. It's the same thing as meditating on the Bible. It's about the garden. It's about the symbols. It's about the connection. It's about that telepathic communication. Get into harmony. Play on the 10-string harps. Learn the song. Master the song of the Lamb. Harmonize the harmonies and the frequencies and get the flow of flowing. Feel the power of love. You'll never go back. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go. It's almost about an hour now. Hope you guys have a really great day. This is David Vos. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.